Imagine a city within a city, a place teeming with life, energy, and resilience. A place where every corner tells a story and every street is a testament to the human spirit. This is the essence of a favela, a unique type of informal settlement found throughout Brazil. These communities are often misunderstood and misrepresented, but they are an integral part of the urban landscape. Characterized by their densely packed houses and often precarious locations, favelas are home to millions of Brazilians. These homes, built with whatever materials are available, stand as a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of their residents. They are vibrant communities with their own culture, challenges, and triumphs. The streets are alive with the sounds of daily life, from the laughter of children to the rhythms of samba music. Favelas typically cling to hillsides overlooking bustling cities like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. These locations, while offering stunning views, also pose significant risks, especially during the rainy season when landslides can occur. Their colorful houses, stacked one on top of another, create a striking visual contrast to the modern skyscrapers below. This juxtaposition highlights the stark economic disparities that exist within these cities. But behind this picturesque facade lies a complex history marked by poverty, inequality, and social exclusion. The origins of favelas date back to the late 19th century, when former slaves and soldiers settled in these areas, seeking refuge and a place to call home. Despite the challenges, favelas are far from being places of despair. They are communities where hope and resilience thrive, where people come together to support one another and build a better future. They are places where hope and resilience thrive. Art and culture flourish here, with vibrant murals and music that tell the stories of the community's struggles and victories. They are communities forged in the face of adversity, where residents support each other and strive for a better future. Initiatives like community gardens and local cooperatives are common, showcasing the collective effort to improve living conditions. This essay delves into the untold history of Brazilian favelas, exploring their origins, evolution, and the daily realities faced by their residents. Through the voices of those who live there, we gain a deeper understanding of the resilience, creativity, and strength that define these communities. Join us as we uncover the rich tapestry of life in Brazilian favelas, where every day is a testament to the enduring human spirit. The roots of Brazilian favelas can be traced back to the late 19th century, a time of significant change and upheaval. This period was marked by the end of slavery and the beginning of a new social order, but it was also a time of great uncertainty and struggle for many. Following the abolition of slavery in 1888, thousands of newly freed slaves found themselves with nowhere to go and no means of support. They were thrust into a society that was unprepared to integrate them, leaving them to fend for themselves in a harsh and unwelcoming environment. Many migrated to cities in search of opportunities, only to face discrimination and lack of housing. The urban centers were not equipped to handle the influx of people, and the newly freed slaves were often met with hostility and prejudice. They were forced to live in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, with little hope for a better future. At the same time, Brazil was engaged in the Canudos War, a conflict against a rebellion in the northeastern state of Bahia. This war further strained the country's resources and diverted attention away from the pressing social issues at home. Soldiers fighting in this war were promised land grants upon their return. These promises were made to incentivize enlistment and boost morale among the troops who were risking their lives for their country. However, these promises were largely forgotten by the government. The soldiers returned home to find that the land they had been promised was not available, and they were left to fend for themselves, much like the newly freed slaves. With no homes and their sacrifices ignored, these veterans, many of them Afro-Brazilians, settled on the hillside surrounding Rio de Janeiro. They were determined to create a new life for themselves, despite the government's broken promises and the harsh conditions they faced. They built makeshift shelters from whatever materials they could find. These shelters were often constructed from scrap wood, metal, and other discarded materials, reflecting the resourcefulness and resilience of the people who built them. This marked the birth of the first favela, initially called Morro da Favela, after a plant found on the hillside. Over time, these settlements grew and evolved, becoming a symbol of both the struggles and the strength of the people who lived there. The story of the favelas is a testament to the enduring spirit of those who refuse to be forgotten. Over the decades, favelas grew and multiplied, driven by a combination of factors. The 20th century saw massive internal migration in Brazil. People from rural areas flocked to cities like Rio and Sao Paulo, looking for better jobs and a better life. However, the cities were unprepared for this influx of people. Housing shortages became acute. The government failed to provide adequate housing solutions for the growing urban poor. Favelas, with their informal and unregulated housing, became the only option for many. As a result, favelas expanded rapidly, organically growing on the outskirts of major cities. They became a visible symbol of Brazil's stark economic disparities, highlighting the gap between the wealthy and the marginalized. Life in the favelas is marked by a unique set of challenges. Poverty is widespread, and many residents struggle to make ends meet. Access to basic services, like running water, sanitation, and electricity, is often limited and unreliable. Overcrowding and inadequate housing conditions pose significant health risks. Crime and violence, fueled by drug trafficking, cast a shadow over many communities. The lack of formal land ownership creates constant uncertainty for residents. Despite these hardships, favelas are also places of immense strength and resilience. They are characterized by a strong sense of community and solidarity. Residents rely on each other for support, forming close-knit networks of mutual aid. Beginning in the 1980s, the drug trade cast a dark cloud over many Brazilian favelas. These communities, already struggling with poverty and lack of infrastructure, found themselves at the mercy of powerful drug lords. Powerful drug gangs established strongholds within these communities, exploiting the lack of government presence and the poverty of residents. They took advantage of the desperation and hopelessness that pervaded the favelas. This led to a surge in violence as gangs clashed over territory and control of the drug trade. The streets became battlegrounds, with frequent shootouts between rival gangs and law enforcement. Innocent people caught in the crossfire often became victims of this conflict. Families mourned the loss of loved ones, and the community lived in constant fear of the next outbreak of violence. The presence of heavily armed gangs created a climate of fear and instability. Residents were often too afraid to leave their homes, and the constant threat of violence loomed over daily life. The drug trade trapped many favela residents in a cycle of poverty and violence. Homes were abandoned, and the already poor living conditions deteriorated further as the violence escalated. It offered few economic opportunities outside of criminal activities. Small-scale economic activities struggled to survive, and the local economy suffered greatly. Young people in particular were vulnerable to recruitment by gangs, seeing it as their only path to survival. With limited access to education and employment, many felt they had no other choice but to join the gangs. Despite the challenges, some community programs aim to provide alternatives for the youth, offering education and support to steer them away from a life of crime. The resilience of the favela residents shone through as they came together to support one another, striving to break the cycle of violence and poverty that had plagued their communities for decades. For much of their history, favelas were largely ignored by the Brazilian government. They were seen as problem areas, hotbeds of poverty and crime that authorities were reluctant to address. Government policies often focused on eradication or removal rather than integration and improvement. Attempts to address the issues in favelas were often piecemeal and ineffective. Programs were launched and abandoned, promises made and broken. The lack of consistent and sustained investment left many residents feeling neglected and abandoned by the state. This neglect further marginalized favela communities, reinforcing the cycle of poverty and inequality. It fueled a deep sense of distrust towards the government and its institutions. In the face of government inaction, residents of favelas took matters into their own hands. Grassroots organizations and community leaders emerged, working tirelessly to improve conditions in their communities. They organized themselves to provide essential services, create educational opportunities, and fight for their rights. They built schools, healthcare clinics, and community centers with limited resources and unwavering determination. This spirit of self-reliance and community empowerment became a defining characteristic of favelas. It demonstrated the resilience and resourcefulness of residents in the face of adversity.